Okie dokies. Was there a bit of echo there?
I think, nope. I just started the recording and we are going live. We'll just give just a minute for everyone to jump on. All right, hello and welcome to this episode of On the Horizon. My name is Tiffany and I'm delighted to be here as the host for today. We are joined by Nikki Brandon, Vice President of Ker Downey, who you are probably very familiar with. And then we have all the way from Botswana, we have Fran Hird joining us today from Ker Downey Botswana. She is originally from England, but has lived and worked in Botswana for over a decade now in the tourism industry and has been with Ker Downey Botswana for 10 years and is the managing director of Ker Downey Botswana. You may recognize the familiarity in our names. While we do have very similar names, thanks to just a really long, rich legacy that we both share a part in. We are actually separately owned and operated companies. And I'm just so excited to hear what they both have to say about Botswana today. I'm lucky enough to have been to Botswana a few times and can easily say I'd go back 100 times more. It's just such a unique safari destination, such a special destination. So I'm super excited to hear what they have to say today. If you have questions throughout the webinar, please feel free to type them in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen, and we will address them at the end. And without further ado, I will go ahead and turn this over to Nikki.
Yes, hi there. Glad to see you all again. I do realize that there are some people on this presentation who have been to Botswana already, others who haven't. So we're trying to keep it as comprehensive as possible for everybody so that you can enjoy it. Yeah, and Fran, great. And thanks for staying up late for joining us.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's pretty much sundowner time here in Botswana.
Exactly. Yes, and I've just had my last cup of coffee for the day. So let's bring it on. So the first picture that we're just delving into is obviously to let you see where Botswana actually is, and how we can get there, and then the various airports where you can fly into. So if you'd like to take over from there, Fran.
Yeah, thanks, Nikki. So getting into Botswana, our main access points are Maun or Kasane, and we have daily flights pretty much from Cape Town and Johannesburg into Botswana. So that's the most common route arriving into Botswana. There are other access points through Zambia, Zimbabwe and Namibia. So we're ideally located to do a multi-country itinerary within Southern Africa. And then just to talk about once you arrive in Botswana and you know what makes it so unique is the different areas that we have within Botswana, and you can see here on this map. So Nikki, if you're okay, do you want me to go into those areas a little bit, or do you have anything to add on access?
No, just that there are flights going in, and also up there in that top corner where Zambia, Zimbabwe and Kasane are, you can actually, it doesn't have to be a direct fly-in, you can actually do land transfers across. And in fact, at Kasane now, there is a brand new, highly exciting, sophisticated bridge that heads into Livingstone that has cut the old antiquated time down there of going across on a ferry. So that's also been a new development there too. So
yeah, and talking about new developments, we've also got new airports. So for those of you that might have been to Maun pre-COVID, as we call it, you would have gone to the old airport. Now we've got a new airport. It's very modern, it's very clean, slick. We've even got proper carousels that go around with your luggage. So It's, you know, you're still landing into a really quaint little village of Maun, but you've got the convenience of a proper international airport now. So that was pretty exciting to see that going up during COVID, and now it's fully operational, and much smoother process going through the Maun airport. And then, of course, once you arrive, you're then there and ready to go into the various locations and destinations. But we will go into a little bit of that about how you get around the destination once you have arrived in Botswana.
So here we go. Gorgeous picture here. Makes me want to go back straight away. Okay, Fran, as we know, I can take hours rambling on about why Botswana is so special. So, and obviously we're on a sort of, you know, we can't keep everybody here all day. So if you'd like to take over from here about, you know, why Botswana and what makes it so special.
Yeah, so I think the first thing is to kind of look at the different areas and the different land uses, particularly up in northern Botswana, where most of the tourism activity actually happens. And to simplify it, we can divide it into private concessions. So these are areas that different individual companies are given custodianship of, and there's private operations that happen there. And then the other side of it is the game reserves and the national parks, and they actually have the highest level of protection, and they are often the epicenter of the wildlife experience. So if you think of the Chobe National Park or the Moremi Game Reserve, and they have different regulations for operating in those different areas, and you can get different activities within the different types of areas. So that's kind of how the land use is divided up, and that, you know, the fundamentals of how it's all divided up is based around conservation and conserving these wildlife areas. So the private concessions are actually wildlife managed areas, that's what they're referred to, and there's very strict rules and regulations about how we can operate in those areas. And this all ties into the very low impact, low volume tourism that you see in Botswana. So it's exceptionally exclusive. You know, very few people can actually be visiting the Delta or the Moremi or the Chobe at any one time.
Yeah, and then I think also a point to make to everybody, and I always point this out, is, you know, it does come at quite a high cost, but I think once you get there, everything is actually included at the camps that we send you to, and that, you know, everything is flown into these camps, so that, you know, by the time your lettuce leaf arrives on your plate at camp at lunchtime, it has been transported up to Maun, flown in. So it's basically gold plated, is what I say. And, you know, and that's how it all operates. And also what's very important is, for those of you that have been on a South African safari, these concessions here are huge, and there's, as we go through the program, you'll see, you know, say the Shindi concession is absolutely massive. There is only 16 of you on that concession. Okay, whereas in some of the other South African areas and in some of their concessions, there'll be 3 or 4 properties on there at the same time. So they're really serious about this low volume message that gets across through to everybody, you know, that wants to go to Botswana. And then also, Fran, UNESCO sites as well.
Yeah, so we were awarded, the Okavango Delta was awarded a UNESCO site, which recognizes it internationally, and it's really important. It adds the extra layer of protection to this incredibly delicate and important ecosystem, and probably one of the last untouched wildernesses that we have in Africa, or in the planet indeed. So that's also really important, and part of that is the cultural side of it. So it's not just about the conservation, it's not just about the wildlife, of course that's critical, but it's also about the cultural element, and Sedilo Hills falls within that UNESCO site, and it's seen as a very important place culturally and historically. So that's also, you know, kind of a highlight within Okavango Delta and northern Botswana as a whole, and tied into its status and its protection.
Yeah, and then there's also the shrimp paintings in there, which are quite famous as well. So obviously we'll go into it later again in the presentation, but from these camps you can, helicopter in to go and see the Sodilo Hills. So there's always plenty of activity and variety and things you can do, and there's so much to do. So and then I think, Fran, we just need to discuss the difference between the land and the water camps, and the advantage that some of these camps that we're going to go through today actually do both.
Yeah, I think that's really critical to a great itinerary to Botswana, is getting the right balance. Certain areas of the Delta only offer water-based activities, and other areas only offer dry-based. It's the land that they're within. You can have some really quaint little islands in the heart of the Delta surrounded by water, where the focus is exploring the waterways and the aquatic species that you find there. So a typical water-based camp, you would be doing fishing and birding and going out on the boats and the makorals. And we'll go into a little bit of detail about each of these activities. And then with the water-based camps, with the land-based camps, the opposite, you'd be doing your game drives. Some areas offer walking, some areas offer horse riding, and you've got those dry land, and then you've got these combined camps where you offer the full range of activities. You've got both your land and your water-based camps from one location, and it's quite important to get that balance. And I think you don't have to spend all of your time in one specific type of camp. It's nice to move around and experience the different areas. And moving just a couple of kilometers, it might look like an inch on a map, but the entire terrain and habitat can differ from one location to the next.
Okay, and then so following on from that, here you'll see all the different areas that we have that Fran was talking about. So down in this area, which is like the Central Kalahari Game Reserve, you've got the Makgadikgadi Pans National Park. They're all more of the drier area, the real the desert area. And then up here, as you see, you have the Okavango Delta, which we will be going through as well. So so I think Fran has mainly, she's touched on the Okavango Delta as well as the Central Kalahari. So also we do offer up to, there are different areas that we can travel to, but as I said, I mean, we can go on, for hours, but we can also head up to the Chobe National Park, which is very famous for its elephants, and up towards the borders with Zambia and Zimbabwe. And so that, just to give you a bigger picture of what we've got. And then the next question, Fran, everybody asks me, so I'm sure they ask you, what's the best seasons? What are the seasons and what's the best time to travel there?
Yeah, absolutely. It's always a question that I get asked, and my answer is always the same. You can come to Botswana any time of the year. It really is an all year round destination. We have incredible wildlife right the way through the year, and each year or each month has its nuances, has something different that it offers. So just to kind of give you an example, green season. So green season is our rainy season. And it's when the bush really comes to life. It's lush and green. It's amazing for keen photographers. You get really impressive storms and thunderstorms. So our rainy season is kind of tropical. You get the afternoon showers, and then the sun comes out and it's beautiful again. It's the birding season, so we get all the summer migratory birds coming down to southern Africa. It's the time of year where you get all the babies. So if you're a bit of a softie and you want to be seeing a lot of the plains game babies coming out, the impala and like that's kind of your green season destination to come. You also get incredible rates in the green season. Sometimes half the price, but you're certainly getting more than half the experience if you can travel during that time. So green season is from December, when we get the first rains, right the way through January, February, March. Then we're heading into shoulder season. Personally, one of my favorite times of year is April, May to be traveling. Really great temperatures, it's still nice and warm, and the wildlife is really great in that season. You've still got a lot of vegetation out, although you're getting drier days. And then going into our peak season, which is our dry season. So we don't really get any rain after April. From April till about November, not a drop in the sky. And that's when the bush really dries out. And our peak season is hinging around this dry season. And the reason behind that is as soon as the vegetation starts drying back, it's a little bit easier to be getting that great game viewing. It's a bit easier to track into the denser bush. Also, something to bear in mind is the temperatures. And I think it's one of the least thought about things about Botswana. If you are coming in the middle of our winter, yes, it's Africa, but it is pretty cold. So we go from our coldest month being August to our hottest month of the year being October. So it's always really good to chat to the specialists and ask them, you know, let them know what your focus is. Are you a keen photographer? Are you a keen birder? What's your budget like? What's your tolerance to different temperatures like? And they'll be able to recommend a time of year that really works best for you. But there really is no such thing as a bad time to come to Botswana.
And I think, obviously, because we were obviously on shorter time, but we need to mention what's called the flood that comes once a year that actually happens up in Angola, and it totally depends on the rain. Okay, yeah. And I once had a client phone me saying that he didn't want to come because of the flood. So I had to explain to him that there's no waves, that it doesn't come in fast, it's slow, it creeps up maybe overnight, maybe 3 centimeters a night. It's tiny. And as you can see, there's thousands hectares out there for the flood to diverse. So the flood is not a bad thing. It's almost a sort of, it's a negative word, but it isn't. It's absolutely wonderful. So, and that is when the water is higher, is during July, August, September. And then it starts to recede down. So also my favorite time of the year to go is, I also love September because I hate the cold. So it's just, it's great. You know, and even during the cold season, it does still get hot during the day. I used to drive Fran mad because I would head to my office with my big thick jacket on, and then by 5 o'clock in the evening I'd forget because it was so warm still, and I would leave my jacket on the back of my seat in the office, so that by the end of the cold season my chair was slowly folding backwards from the weight of all the jackets that I kept leaving behind as I headed home in the evening. So it is still nice and warm during the day, but it does get cold at night depending on where you are. So I think now the big major question that everyone's dying to know, if it goes forward, thank you, is, it seems to have frozen. There we go. There it is. Okay. I know we do this at the beginning just so that everyone knows what's going on, how it's working. Obviously things change day to day, but I have to say Botswana has been totally pleasant to deal with because they haven't kept changing everything. They've stood to their standards. So Fran, if you'd like to take over from here.
Yeah, so the current situation is that Botswana is open, and we've got loads of North Americans traveling through the camps at the moment. It's very accessible, it's really simple, and it's very safe once you're on safari. So in terms of arriving into Botswana, you just need to have a negative PCR test taken within 72 hours of landing in Botswana. Then when you arrive, we do another rapid test at the government's cost. It's not costing the guests anything extra. And then you're free to move around. You're free to go on safari. And once you're in the camps, it's very safe. We've got all the health and safety procedures in place in all of the properties. So actually everybody that's open, all the different companies and lodges and camps that's open at the moment, they have to be inspected by the health department to make sure that they are able to provide social distancing. They've got the cleaning procedures in place, and really being on safari is the ultimate in social distancing. There's so few people out there. you're in these big spacious camps in the outdoors. There really isn't anything better to be avoiding COVID. Once you've done your safari, you then have to do another PCR test, and you can either choose to do in-camp testing where the nurse flies to you wherever you are. They do the test and then you get your results the following morning before you fly out and leave Botswana. So really, really simple, safe, and as I say, we're open. We've got travellers coming at the moment. There's really no reason to be coming over here.
Okay, and then dining's done within your group?
Yes, exactly. So with social distancing, you're with your group. If you're on a game drive vehicle together, you can opt to dine together. If you're a couple, you can dine separately. With us in our camps, we're really flexible about it depending on the guests. We obviously have to cater for all ends of the spectrum. There's those that are really quite concerned and conscious and worried about COVID, and we can provide all the social distancing that makes them feel comfortable. Equally, we've got people that are wanting to kind of do the group activities. So on the ground, it really is up to the guests and our staff as well, because we're not only responsible for the guests, but also responsible for all of our staff members in the camps and making sure that they are safe as well. And
also, just so everyone knows, that the vaccines are being rolled out on the ground in Botswana, so that's also great news too.
Yeah. And also our camps as well. So all of the staff that go into the camps, they are getting tested before they go into the camp. Everybody that goes to the camp is tested. So if I want to go, I went last week to Shindy and Footsteps, and I had to do a test before I went into that environment. So it is a very controlled environment in terms of who's toing and froing there.
Okay, great. That's awesome. Okay, so then this one is, so we finally move into the nitty-gritty of the camps. And everyone's always asking, how do the clients get to camp? So we can do, Ker Downey Botswana use a lovely company called Safari Air. So, you get met at the airport, picked up or met in Mound by a representative who then escorts you through with all your luggage and everything to put you on the aircraft. And there's also helicopter you can do between camps, which we will touch on later. So, so that's great. Then the next one, so Fran, over to you. So updates on your camps.
Yeah, so our biggest and super exciting news is that we rebuilt Shindy. We were really fortunate. We got permission to carry on with the rebuild right the way through lockdown. So we actually started in November 2019, and then the build was finished pretty much about this time last year, although we didn't have any guests initially to be able to go into camp. But yeah, we rebuilt the whole camp, and with the rebuild, we very much paid homage to the history of Shindy and the previous camp. And the reason behind why we rebuilt it, it wasn't because there was anything wrong with the old camp. It's a really well-known camp. It's one of the oldest in the Delta, so loved. But we had to, physically we had to, these structures don't stand forever. They're made out of hardwood decks and canvas. So with the rebuild, and I'll go into a little bit more detail about what we did there, it was very much about paying homage to Ker Downey Botswana and Shindy. And you'll see with the decor and the style, it's very 1920s explorer, very classic safari style, really luxurious. And even in the rebuild, I get a bit geeky about it because I spent 5 months living in a dome tent in the bush as we rebuilt it. But we even used some of the old camps, so some of the old teak from the old property we've used in certain areas, like the showers, the vanities in the bathroom, the kind of built-in bar area in the main area. So I don't know, for me, it's just nice to kind of know that there's a bit of the old camp there in the new one, and we're respectful of history.
Okay, great. So now, so this one's in just to explain to everybody, the different activities that can be done at these land camps or and the water camps as well. So Fran, if you want to start on the left with the picture of the Mokoro, because a lot of people don't understand what it is.
Yeah. So these are basically the different types of activities and different modes of transport within the Delta. So a Mokoro is the traditional form of transport. It's unique to Botswana. It's a must-do activity when you come into Botswana, and it's incredible. It's so tranquil, really peaceful, and you're essentially in a little canoe. Traditionally, they were made out of wood, but for conservation reasons, we now use fiberglass or plastic. You've got your polar, so he's called a polar. It's the guy that's at the back there. He's got a big stick, which is actually called an ngashi, and it's a bit like a gondola. He pulls you along. It's just so tranquil, so relaxing. And it's all about seeing the aquatic species, so finding the little reed frogs, the bird life. It's incredibly safe. So the Mokoros only go in the shallow floodplain areas. You're not going in the big deep channels or lagoons. No, it's literally knee deep for most of the time that you're out there. And that's why it's the traditional form of transport, because they could get in and around everywhere in the Delta. Even with a few inches of water, you're able to go through there. And actually at Kanana, we've got, I think they're the only ones in the Delta, we've got glass bottom Mokoros. So not only do you have a view to everything above the water level or above ground, you can also have a window down under the water as well.
Yeah, and those are great. Do you want to tell us about your safari vehicles?
Yeah, and I think they're really important, because the reality is you're spending so much time on them. You know, you're going often on morning game drives, afternoon game drives. If you want to, you can go on night drives. So you're spending hours in these vehicles, and they really need to be fit for purpose and comfortable. And we spent a lot of time really looking at ours and customizing them to the needs of the guests and the comfort of the guests. So things like having compartments where you can store your things. You know, Nikki was talking about in the winter, when you first thing in the morning, it's pretty chilly, you've got all these layers on. Come 10 o'clock in the morning, you're stripping off to your shorts and t-shirt, you've got places to put all of those things, your camera gear, your binoculars, your reference books. Super comfy in terms of the armrests. So each window seat has an armrest that you can move up and down. Also great for keen photographers. You can rest your big lens on there. And we really have thought a lot about photography. And even if it's the iPhone photographer, you still need your space and your comfort. And we actually have a policy where we guarantee window seats, and we guarantee maximum 4 on a vehicle. Of course, if it's a family or a little bit of a bigger group, we can accommodate more. Often the kids are squabbling over going next to the guide, because they are then co-ranger and they can be answering the radio. We can also remove the roof as well. So particularly cool to go and do a night drive with the roof off. We do that in the winter months, otherwise in the summer it's pretty hot. But yeah, really important to also look at the areas that you're going. So if you're in a private concession, you will be allowed to off-road for high-profile sightings, and that's really your predators. Once you're in the parks and reserves, there's regulations there to protect the environment, so you do stick to the roads. But yeah, you're going to spend a lot of time on these vehicles out on game drives. So they must be comfy.
Excellent. They've got the big power boats, but they obviously only go where the water is obviously deep enough, and these are obviously extremely awesome. If you just want to touch lightly on that, Fran.
Yeah, because I can chat for days about it, but from my personal view, is one of my favorite activities is from Akuti going out on the boat to the Kakanika Lagoon. And I always recommend people go there in the afternoon, and you can do sundowners out there. You can watch the sunset across the water. You've got the birds flying overhead coming in to roost for the night. But really great to go out on the boats. We do it from most of our areas, and just a very, very cool experience. And you see different species out on the water, like your crocs and your hippos, Sitatunga if you're really lucky.
Yep. And then every now and then those elephants crossing and swimming and
Yeah.
having fun. So that's great. And then the next activity we do, well, the Ker Downey Botswana does, is the walking safaris, which again is an awesome activity to do.
Yeah, and I often think that when people are booking their trip, it might not be the first thing that springs to mind when they're thinking about their Botswana safari. But I've spoken to so many guests after their trip, and it actually can be their highlight, because you are down on the ground, everything's so up close and personal. It's also great to get a bit of exercise. It's a bit more adventurous, and you're going out with highly qualified, highly experienced guides. So you're in very capable hands. We always walk with a firearm. All of our guides have got trails guide training. So you're really in good hands. And it's just great to go and see different elements, whether it's tracking the wildlife or learning about the plants, the birds. You also have some really great sightings when you're out on foot. So it's definitely something to think about if you weren't thinking about it before, is incorporating a walk in your trip. And most areas offer it. Most of our camps offer walking.
Yeah, so there is, we'll be talking about it later, there's a dedicated walking safari camp, or the walking safari can be included as part of your activity when you're at Kanana or Shindi. And one question we get asked is, how fit do you have to be? You don't. Again, it's totally tailored. And as you'll see from that photo there, there's the lead guide, and then there's always a backup guide, you know, just to keep the group contained. We recently had some clients out at the Footsteps camp, and their game viewing was absolutely incredible. A lot of people also ask, well, what if you come, you know, what if you come across lions? So the guide will then radio into camp, and then a game drive vehicle will come out, put the clients in the vehicle, and then you can go and get better shots, because obviously you don't want to get too close to get your picture. And walking at the at camps like Shindi and Kanana are done mainly in the morning, because obviously in the evenings is time when lions and things start to hunt. So we don't, you know, you're back before sun sets there. So then fishing is also another activity everyone can do. If you're an experienced, you know, serious fishing person, I can't say fisherman, but fishing person, it is recommended that you do bring your own fishing equipment. It's done purely on catch and release, and however, if it is big enough and the client wants to, they can have it for starters later. Correct, Fran?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a really great activity for families as well, to go out. And if you've never fished in your life before, give it a go. You can also have a go at the traditional fishing, the line fishing, which is literally a worm on a hook that you hang over the side of the boat. And it's quite funny how competitive everybody gets about it. And the guides are really great at introducing you to fishing.
There is a certain time of the year which, if I remember rightly, December, January, you're not allowed to fish, Fran, just because of the breeding and everything.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's the breeding season. So it is a closed time of year when we don't fish in the Delta at all.
Great. So here we head off now onto the camps. First one, Kanana, if you want to do a quick, brief description, Fran.
Yeah, okay. So Kanana in a few highlights. It's a land and water-based camp, so you can do all of the activities that we've just talked about, and you can do them right the way through the year. We've got permanent water in the area. It's located on a seasonal floodplain, so for part of the year, if we get a good flood, boats actually take off from the front of camp. When the water recedes, it leaves a really lush green floodplain area where a lot of the plains game come, and then wherever there's plains game, there's predators. We have a sleep out deck at Kanana, so if spending the night out under the stars is up your alley, you can have that experience from Kanana. And we also have the heronry as well. Really incredible experience. There we go, got some photos of it. even if you're not a keen birder, you will be enthralled by this experience. You can get really close. There's literally thousands of birds in this one location, and they come here from June, July, right the way through to November, December time when we get our first rains, and they are building their nests, raising their young. Really great opportunity. So they're things that you don't really get anywhere else. But of course, you've got the full range of activities from Kanana as well. It's a very eco-friendly property, 100% solar. We're really committed to reducing our carbon footprint. So most of our properties are now really advanced in our green policies that we have there. That's Kanana in a nutshell.
Great. And just so you know, that deck has to be booked in advance. Is that not correct?
Yeah, so I mean, ideally you'd be spending 3 nights or more in the camp, but if you book 3 or more nights, you can book the sleep out deck. There's no extra charge. And don't worry, we don't leave you out there entirely on your own. It is really remote. It's about 20 minutes away from camp. You can kind of see in that photo the tree right at the back. The guide's got his own little dome tent. You've got a 2-way radio, so you can contact him at any time. We keep your tent made up for you back in camp, so if you need to head back, you're more than welcome to. And then the deck itself, actually on the platform where you sleep, there's a little bathroom. So if nature calls, you've got a toilet and a wash hand basin close by. So it's a really safe, but really awesome experience.
Right. And then we head on straight south to Danaka, which is all of our clients plus all of us in Ker Downey in the US. We all get glazed over when we talk about Danaka. It is stunning. It's lovely. It's the newest portfolio. Again, Fran, if you just want to lightly touch on it.
Yeah, so it's a really special property, and it's a great contrast to the Delta because it's a completely different terrain, completely different wildlife experience. It's a bit of a hidden gem, really, but every person that goes there absolutely loves it. They fall in love with the place. They fall in love with the staff on the ground there. And this photo that's actually in the presentation is the family room. So it's also really family friendly. All of our properties are. So this one's got 2 bedrooms and then the shared ensuite bathroom at the back. I think, Nikki, is the next slide a little bit about the activities that's on offer at Danaka?
Yep.
Yeah, so really what sets this destination apart is the activities, and they're really diverse. So again, you can see top right, we've got a sleep out option there. We've built it so that you actually don't have to lift your head off the pillow in the morning to see the sun break the horizon. We have really great photographic options. So if you're a keen photographer, we've got the underground photographic bunker where you literally are going down, popping up, the water's a couple of meters in front of you. You get these incredible shots where you're eyeball to eyeball with your subject. And we get the predators going down there. The bird life is amazing. Nikki and I actually were in Danaka together, and we spent a good few hours watching the jackal and their antics, where they would go and catch the quelea. So really, you know, definitely going to spend a morning there at least. And I think the highlight activity on top of your game drives and your night drives and your walking is an educational walk with the Sand Bushmen. It's a phenomenal insight into this ancient culture and kind of where we all come from. And the guys are amazing that take you out on the walk. We normally do it in the morning. They speak English, so you've got that direct line of communication with them. And they teach you about the medicinal uses of plants. It's really interactive, so you can taste things, smell things, have a go at making fire with friction. A really, really special morning out with the guys. And Botswana is quite a challenge to actually interact with the culture on so many different levels. You know, obviously in the camps, you get to meet the people from Botswana, and they're more than happy to share their history and their stories and their upbringing and all of that. But to actually go out and see something of the history and the survival techniques that the guys have, their hunting techniques, really incredible experience.
And I have to back Fran up on this because I've done a couple of the Bushman experiences in different parts of Botswana. And some of them can be quite cheesy. So when Fran told me I had to go and do this, she dragged me along very reluctantly because I was like, oh, here we go, just another one. I have to say it blew my mind. It was the most genuine experience I've ever come across. It was amazing. So she even got me hooked there. So yeah, it's awesome and definitely worth the visit. And then we move up to the Moremi Game Reserve. And yes, look, something totally and utterly different, which is what I do like about all the different Ker Downey Botswana camps. They're not cookie-cutter at all. And each one has its own personality, its own design and everything. So again, Fran, if you want to, wax lyrical about a cootie.
Yeah, so really unique style and architecture to the camp. And as you can see from this image, the ideal location, all of the rooms, the whole main area is right on the edge of this permanent channel. And for the geography buffs out there, this is one of the main fingers of the delta. It's the Monachira River that then becomes the Kwai River. So you are perched right on the edge of it. Slightly smaller camp than our other properties. The style is actually based on the Parliament buildings in Gaborone, and it's all about this, place of meeting, place of gathering. And it's in the Kakanika area of the Moremi Game Reserve. And I mentioned earlier about the reserves and national parks being the areas with the highest level of protection. And the reason behind that is this is the epicenter of the wildlife experience. It's just phenomenal. And the game reserve is huge, so I really encourage people to spend a bit more time here. If you're doing 3 or more nights, we'll encourage guests to go out on a full day trip. They can take a picnic lunch, they can explore the area further, and it's really diverse. So you can be out on a morning game drive and you're going to Dead Tree Island, and then you're going to hippo pools, and then you're going to open grassland where you've got chances of seeing cheetah. It really is the ideal location for wildlife. It's also really accessible, so it's all up on raised wooden walkways. So with guests with any mobility issues, in fact, most of our camps are now wheelchair accessible, but Akuti is just brilliant because it's all connected by these raised wooden walkways through the tree line on the edge of the water.
Perfect. And then last but not least, Shindy and the Shindy Enclave.
Yeah, so this we chat a little bit about this being the update, and we completely rebuilt the whole camp. And when we were designing the rebuild, one of the things that I really wanted to do was make the most of the incredible views over the lagoon that's just in front of camp. So it's permanent water, it's there right the way through the year. So now with the new main area, every element of it is overlooking the water. And it's still built in that tree house style, so it's up in the canopy of the trees. We've got the main lounge, we've got a little study lounge, and we've also got more dining options now. So you can either be in the main dining room, or we can do bush dinners, bush lunches. We've also got the star deck now, so you can go do dinner under the stars. We do private dinners for honeymoon couples or anniversaries. So the whole of camp was rebuilt. We also moved the pool, so the pool is now overlooking the water as well. Redid all of the rooms. We incorporated a family tent. We also dropped the minimum age to 7, so we can take families at Shindy. We also rebuilt Shindy Enclave. So this is the little camp within a camp that's ideal for small groups of friends or family. You essentially get your own little main area. So you do all of your meals from there. It's also great for special interest groups. So maybe if you want to do yoga and you want your own space, or you're artists and you want your own space, Shindy Enclave is often forgotten, but a really great option for little groups and people that are wanting more exclusivity and to remain in their travel bubble, particularly post-COVID. Yeah. And just a bit about the area. It's also private concession. We offer the full range of activities right the way through the year. The wildlife is incredible. It's particularly well known for its leopard. We're on, I don't know how many generations of leopard now. And I was chatting to B, he's one of the guides that's been there for, I think he's been there 38 years now. Yeah. And he was telling me that they actually last week went out and they'd found a mating pair of leopards. So hopefully we've got, I don't know what it is, generation of leopards on the way.
No, brilliant. And then over on the other side of the Shindy concession, there's Footsteps Camp, which is the dedicated walking safari that's 3 tents. This is amazing. And again, we've actually already touched on walking safaris, but it's great. It's a bit more vintage style. It's bucket showers, but you still do have your flush toilets. You don't have to worry about that. That was upgraded quite a few years ago. And that has proved highly successful. And yeah, loads of repeat clients go and do Footsteps. And again, Fran always recommends 3 nights there. Then also there's the program called Young Explorers. Fran, if you'd like to take over on this one.
Yeah, so it's one camp. We run the 2 different safaris from there. So it's either walking guests or it's booked out on exclusive use for families. And it's the ideal location for a family safari because you've got the full run in the place and it's all tailor-made to you and your family, your different ages, your different interests. And the key to a really good family safari is to make it really interactive. No kids want to sit still, being quiet on best behavior on the back of a vehicle. They want to get involved. They want to be collecting feathers to make bows and arrows, and or playing with the pellet guns or slingshots or all sorts of different activities. Just depends on their interests. And it's actually about the whole family. It's not just about the kids. It's about creating these shared memories together as a family.
Yeah, and then the great thing about it, for those of you, we have an awful lot of clients requesting it for spring break because they can do a Kuti, then they do Young Explorers, and then they go off to Danaka. So what's really great about that, and in fact, the last lot we had on spring break, I think 2 of the kids cried all the way back to Johannesburg. So that just shows what a great program it actually is. And then, so in a nutshell, I think some of you have noticed that we've actually put together a small group tour, which we don't normally do, but a survey was sent out to all of you that are on here, and quite a few actually requested it. So, and it came on the back of, in February, even pre-vaccination, I went out to South Africa and we did the Sabi, and then we'd done Cape Town, we did Vic Falls, and quite a few people are on there like, oh, well, we also want to go to Botswana too now. So it's all sort of evolved into things, and especially, you know, with the worried of you know, COVID and things like that. So we have launched one, and this one's happening in March, and that will be doing, to start with, we will be doing 3 nights at Sabi. We'll be going to Vic Falls for 2 nights, and then we're doing Kanana and Dinaka, which we've just gone through. And the added bonus, well, I like to think it's an added bonus, is that I will be there with you all on it. So it'll be quite exciting, and hopefully Fran might even come up for a night. But again, you can email us for more details on that. It's a great time of the year to go in March. So that should go really well. I'm looking forward to it. And then also a big part of the Ker Downey Botswana setup is their philanthropy work. And as you know, we all do philanthropy as well. In the USA, throughout the world. So the big thing about like the escorted safari or just life in general is if you do what's called the Ker Downey Botswana safari, money is actually donated to Bana Tsatsi, which we call BBL for short. And every time this is done, a donation is actually made to the Center for the Street Children of Maun. And the great thing is that quite a bit of that money has just actually gone into building them a new safe house. So we're all highly excited about that. And then, so here we've just got the Ker Downey Family Safari, again, a sample itinerary we can send you through of what, you know, can be done. And then we've got the Desert to Delta Safari again, but remember, we totally work as you know, customized, tailored, so you don't have to do those. Those are just purely sample itineraries of what you might like. And then also just to touch on, so we also book other camps as well, you know, continuing on from that customized theme. So favorite Fran and I is the horse riding safaris, which are actually fantastic. As we touched on earlier, you know, you can just whiz around the Delta camp to camp in helicopter, which is actually awesome. You just got to be careful there with the amount of luggage you have. You know, sundowners are done, bush dinners are done. There's all sorts of, you know, experiences that you can do that, you know, aren't repetitive. And then also very important is that we can do tripping extensions. So going back to that, the original map we had, you can do extensions onto Victoria Falls, you can head into Zimbabwe or Zambia, you can head off to Namibia, you can do Cape Town, or as I touched on earlier, we can also do you can also safari in South Africa, and that, as you know, is a totally, you know, individual presentation on its own. So I think we've come to an end there, and we've only gone 5 minutes over. There's a record, Fran.
We could have talked for hours. We didn't even get into our personal stories of trips we've done.
We did that well. So I know we basically, as you can gather from Fran and I, are quite passionate about Botswana. We did literally touch the tip of the iceberg. I mean, we didn't even touch the south and the Thule block, which is also another great area. So maybe we'll just have to do another presentation for you all. You know, we didn't head up into the Chobe, but again, as I said, we can always do another presentation there as well. So Tiffany, I think we've got quite a few questions and chats.
Thank you. That was awesome. Like I said at the beginning, I would go back to Botswana 100 times over. And I think, you know, from all of our travelers and also Ker Downey employees who have been traveling during the pandemic, you know, what everyone's saying on safaris, but also anywhere in the world, right, is like, it's such a unique time to travel to these destinations that have no people, and you have these amazing game sightings and no vehicles around. And what's amazing about Botswana is like, that's what Botswana is like all the time. You know, pre-pandemic, it'll be that way post-pandemic. And so that's something I love so much about Botswana, is that you can always have that really exclusive experience, regardless of traveling during a pandemic or not. So anyhow, as I mentioned, if you have questions, go ahead and feel free to put them into the chat box or the Q&A. We had a few come in. Some I answered, but I'll just bring them up here. One person asked, is it possible to travel alone to Botswana as a solo traveler?
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the big things is when you get here, the culture in Botswana is so warm and friendly and inviting. You feel at home, you feel part of the family really quickly. So yeah, absolutely family travel. I think, Nikki, you guys do quite a bit of family travel, sending guests out on their own.
Yeah. And also the good thing about Ker Downey Botswana is they're very nice with their single supplement, because there's nothing worse than rubbing in the salt in the wound that you're single and then having to pay a huge single supplement. I find that terribly rude. So so they're very lenient there as well. So that's nice to know. And yeah, and you're totally safe, and you can be you know, you can either decide to Makoro on your own, or you can join somebody else, or, you know, it's totally up to you. And I think the great thing from my point of view about Ker Downey Botswana is they really do make you feel as if you're part of the family. So much so that we have repeat clients who go to Footsteps every year, and on the last night they cook for the staff. And the staff sits, the staff are made to sit for dinner, and they're served upon by these wonderful clients of ours who I think they've been there 8 times now. So yeah. I would encourage it. Yeah, and it's totally safe to be single, and you are looked after from the beginning to the end.
Yeah, I also had a guest that was they were traveling on their own, and their feedback to me was, I said it was amazing from when they picked up their luggage off the, well, we didn't have a conveyor belt then, but when they picked up their luggage when it came through at the Maun airport, they said they didn't carry their bag for the next 14 days as they went round from safaris, and they would arrive somewhere and they weren't, you know, they were on holiday, they were relaxing, they weren't quite sure where they were going, when they were going, and somebody was always there to tell them what the next, you know, your flight is this time tomorrow, or would you like to do this, or, you know, you're so well taken care of from the moment you arrive to the moment you leave. It's very stress-free.
Yeah, and also the fact that, you know, I don't know what expression they use in the States, but overseas, you know, if you're single, you're made to feel a bit like a gooseberry, you know, sort of prickly and hairy, especially when you're surrounded by all these honeymoon couples. That doesn't happen in Botswana. You are so included in everything.
Yeah, sometimes I go into the camps and I'll meet the guests, and I look around and I'm trying to figure out who's with who, and you just don't know because everybody's just mingling.
Yeah.
Thank you. Another question that came up was about, it was really about testing getting to Botswana, which I answered in the chat. So there, as you guys mentioned, there are a lot of ways to sort of get to Botswana. And now luckily there are a lot of options for rapid PCR tests here in the States, so that you might still have a test that's valid to get into Botswana. But Johannesburg Airport also offers 2-hour turnaround on PCR tests. But Fran, maybe you could just talk about, for ongoing travel, of course, most places require that testing. What is it like to get tested in the bush?
Yeah, so it will be booked with us, and that means it's our problem. It's our logistics. We make sure that it runs smoothly, and we work really closely with the labs here and coordinate it all for you. So as the guests, you're going to be spending your last day on safari in Botswana. Normally it's late morning. You'll be given a time, you go to the airstrip, a nurse lands in full gear, you know, full protective gear. They take the samples are then flown back to Maun, the results are run, they're there early the following morning. We actually get your results as well, so they'll be sent to you. You'll get a soft copy if you want to receive them yourself. We'll also have a copy for you. We'll give you a hard copy of the results, so that you've got all of that for when you are boarding your flight back to Johannesburg or back to Cape Town at lunchtime. So it runs really smoothly, and we're here on the ground to ensure that it runs smoothly.
Great. And then when it comes to, if someone were to test positive while at the camps, what would you do? And also, just generally speaking, if someone were in need of advanced medical care while they're at one of the camps, what happens?
Yeah, so there's two really different scenarios here. There's a scenario if somebody is unwell, and that can be anything. You know, it doesn't even have to be COVID related. And then you know, we cover you to evacuate you to the nearest medical facility. So more often than not, that would be Maun. And we've got various ways of evacuating you if necessary via helicopter with medical professionals on board that helicopter. That's for the most extreme cases. Otherwise, you know, if you're just feeling a bit unwell and you need to see a doctor, we also have a company doctor that you could talk to. So if you just wanted to chat to him and get some reassurance or get some advice from a doctor, and you don't want to leave your trip, that's on offer. Then if it's COVID and you test positive, the reality is it's possible. Then we're there. Yes, your trip has ended with us, but we're not going to leave you. We're definitely going to make sure that you're well taken care of. So you would come back to Maun. We've got a facility here. It's actually our sister company, Sadia Hotel, is fully signed off and equipped to take you. First things that we would do is we'd rerun the tests just to make sure, just to rule out any kind of false positive. And then if it came back positive again, you'd then go to Sadia, where they take care of you. They'll deliver all the meals to your room. It's really comfortable. It's not high end, but it's really comfortable. It's totally fine. After 5 days, we'd run the tests again. If you tested negative, so basically as soon as you test negative, you can go home. If you test positive again, you'll then stay there for 14 days. After 14 days, you can be signed off as fit to travel back home, even if you're still testing positive. At that point, you've got proof of your 14 days quarantine and you're free to go. We have had this scenario already, very few. It was actually Americans, and it was 2 sisters. One tested positive, was a doctor. So we have, we've gone through all of these scenarios already, and we're really well equipped to handle it. And of course, we would keep in contact with Nikki and Tiffany and the guys there, just to make sure that they're all in the loop and your family's aware as well. So yeah, that's hope that answers that question.
Yeah, that's great. And I'll just add on to that as well, that there are, of course, you should always travel with trip insurance. And it would cover those additional costs that you might incur from having to stay somewhere longer. And then there are also, and of course it would cover, medical, if you needed actual medical care as well, it helps with some of those costs. And then another aspect of insurance that we've seen come up as a result of the pandemic is there are insurance options that will actually provide evacuation back to your home by private jet, even if you're not ill, if it's not required, if it's not medically necessary, but if you would prefer to quarantine at home versus quarantining, in another country, there is insurance, so you can speak with your consultant about those options as well. And then moving on from COVID-related questions, there were a few questions about wildlife. One, it's just a general question of what are the animals, birds and reptiles, what types of species will you encounter in Botswana? And then another question is specific to sort of the difference of what you see in the Delta versus the Kalahari, and how those wildlife experiences differ.
Okay, yeah, sure. So Botswana is incredible for its wildlife, and for those of you that are familiar with East Africa, I like to draw the comparison to there. So, and I was up in Kenya April 2019, and there I would say you've got the volumes. So you'll go and you'll see thousands of zebra in one spot, but not necessarily the diversity. Whereas in Botswana, you've got the diversity. So you might not see 1,000 zebra on a game drive, unless you're going to the Buteti at a particular time of year, and that's what you want to see then maybe. But on the whole, you've got the diversity. So really, really broad range, incredible predators. So if I was to take typical sightings that we'd see, it would be lion, leopard, cheetah, spotted hyena, brown hyena, depending on where you are. They're the predators. And then in terms of your plains game, elephant, giraffe, and then plains game on top of that. Bird life is incredible. And what's really nice about the bird life in Botswana is it's colorful and it's interesting, and they're weird shapes and sizes. And even if you're not into your birds, you cannot leave Botswana without having noticed the birds and having taken an interest into them. And they do vary from location to location. So certain species prefer the dry areas. Take your cheetah, for example. They don't particularly like getting their feet wet. They're in the dry areas. Or if you're particularly keen on seeing hippo, obviously they're in the wetter areas. And then down in the Kalahari, I think there's about 160 odd additional bird species that you see down in the Kalahari during the green season that you don't see in other areas. So it's very, very diverse, the different areas you go, and very game rich. I do think it is about the expectations when you're coming here. You can't watch a Nat Geo documentary that's taken 3 months to film and think that you're going to see that on your first game drive. I mean, prove me wrong. That'd be great if you do. But it's really, really, and also what's so nice is the free movement of the wildlife. So there aren't fences, there aren't barriers. This is, the wildlife has been living like this for millennia.
Yeah, that's amazing.
I know, sorry.
Okay, well, that wraps up our questions. If anyone else has additional questions, you can feel free to contact us at any of the avenues that you can see on your screen. You can call us, go to our website and fill out a contact form. You can also email Nikki directly. If you are working with a designer or have contact already with the designer, feel free to reach out with them for any questions related to Botswana or any other destination of interest. And if you are not already connected with us on one of our social media channels, feel free to find us on Facebook or Instagram or any of your favorite social media platforms, and you can connect with us for further travel inspiration there. Thank you so much for joining, and thank you, Fran, for staying up late from Botswana with us, and Nikki for just sharing both of your amazing insights on Botswana.
Thank you so much for hosting me, and thanks everyone for tuning in. It's a great pleasure to work with you guys, and we hope to welcome more of you to our camps in the near future.
Definitely. And this was recorded, so we will share it with those of you who joined the recording, and then also for anyone who was unable to make it, so you can share with others. Stay tuned for upcoming webinars, which will include Iceland and Croatia. I know of for sure. We have more exciting ones to come as well. So stay tuned for upcoming webinars, and have a wonderful afternoon. Thanks, everybody.